Welcome to the realm of magic and mystery, classic horror and sci-fi. You are now entering the House of the Unusual podcast with your hosts, Eddie and Joe.
Hello, everybody out there. We have our guest, Richard Hilliard, this week. Richard, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Eddie?
I'm doing fantastic, Rich. I hear you got a story to tell. It's interesting. Now,
it's a crazy story. So now, I've been collecting movies and movie posters, comic books, and all that related stuff for pretty much my whole life. And I got really lucky in 1994. I met a young lady, and she loves all this stuff just as much as I do, and she's a collector as well. And it's kind of the moment that her biggest thing, and has been her whole life, is she collects Barbie, and she loves the dolls and the houses and all that stuff, and she has vintage stuff and she buys new stuff all the time. So she's a very active Barbie collector, and I support that just the same way she supports my monster and horror movie and superhero fetish. So anyway, when we first met, she was telling me about something that she grew up with her mom, and her mom was a student at night and worked in a grocery store during the day, and they didn't have a lot of money. And by the time she had gotten out of high school, she realized that she needed to kind of make her own way in the world, and she kind of stepped away from Barbie for a little bit there early in the 90s. And one of the things that she missed out on was something that she always had wanted, and she told me about it many times, and it was this thing called the Barbie Magical Mansion. And it's an interesting backstory. The person who created the Magical Mansion had been promoted from He-Man and Masters of the Universe to Barbie, which was still Mattel's number one thing at that time. And he had this great idea. He believed, and rightly so, that there was a market for higher-end Barbie collectibles. Now, yes, he was right, but he was ahead of his time. And the Magical Mansion, which is a huge, huge toy, retailed for $300, I believe, back when it was unleashed in 1990, and it was subsequently a big flop. But by the time eBay became a thing, and I got pretty skilled at tracking down fairly good deals on eBay. This is back when everything was auction based. I told her, I said, I'm going to find you one of these Magical Mansions. It may take a little while, but I'm going to keep my eyes and ears open. And oddly enough, I found one that was going off, and it was going off on a Sunday night, very late, like after midnight. And that was always the good time to buy collectibles, toys that skewed towards little girls. Now, if you wanted something that skewed towards little boys, action figures and things like that, Sunday night at midnight, that was a bad time, because that's when everybody was looking for that stuff. But I had my eye on this Magical Mansion, and interestingly enough, the night that it went off, there was a blackout across a good part of the north and central north west of the country. So there were a whole lot of people that had no internet access, and I got this thing for opening bid, which was $300. So it was the original retail price. Now, they had been going for over $1,200. I saw one time that was just in a beautiful, pristine box. It had gone for almost $2,000, and I just knew that I was going to do better than that. So getting this thing for $300 and $100 for shipping seemed like a bargain. Well, back then I was having my stuff shipped to my office because the post office, the home delivery, was very spotty and unreliable, to the degree that years before I'd won a contest where I'd won a signed print of the Alien It was the illustration that H.R. Giger had done for the book Giger's Alien, and it was signed by him. I wanted, when it was delivered, the postman bent the tube in half and shoved it in the mailbox, and the print was ruined. So I had that scar for many years. Anyway, so I'm in my office and my phone rings, and it's one of the administrative people, and they said to me, "Rich, you got to come upstairs to the mailroom. There's a box in there that's so big that people can't use the copy machine." So I go upstairs, and seriously, this box is 6 feet long, it's 4 feet wide, and it's about 2 feet deep. So it's like it's like the size of a refrigerator, but only half as deep. And I was like, well, I can't get this home in my car, so I have to bring a truck tomorrow. So I muscled it down in my office. Next day, I brought my truck, got it home, and opened it up. We were redoing our dining room at the time and didn't have any furniture in there. And when I opened the contents of this box, it took up the entire floor of this dining room. It was just hundreds of pieces, including a plastic bag that had been taped up into a ball with hundreds of metal screws with pink heads, like they'd been individually painted pink. And I'm looking around at all this stuff, and I said, "Where's the instructions?" And my wife is like, "Aren't they here?" And I'm like, "No, I don't think so." And we went through everything 3 times, no instructions. And my wife says to me, she said, "Well, you're really good at putting models together, stuff like that. Don't you think you can just figure it out?" And I was like, no way. This is way too complex. So she was like, "Well, what are we going to do?" I said, "I'll take care of this too." So I got on the internet and I joined a Barbie MSN group and put the call out for anybody that had the instructions. And this very nice lady had one of the mansions. She had the instructions, and she scanned all 32 pages. I believe it's 32 pages of the instruction manual and sent me the PDF. And long story short, it took me 11 hours to put this thing together. And it's massive. I mean, it's just insane. It's clearly inspired by the success of shows like Dallas and Dynasty. And it's just, it's quite the centerpiece. And it's the cornerstone of her Barbie collection. But I think the moral of the story is that if you're both motivated, if one spouse supports the other in their hobbies and things like that, that you can overcome a lot of obstacles and you can be there for each other. And it's still a prized possession of her Barbie collection. So yay Barbie. And we've seen the movie now 3 times. I seem to enjoy it a little less each time, and she seems to enjoy it a little more each time. So we're just going to go with it. And soon it'll be out on Blu-ray and DVD, and I'm sure I will be in another room.
You know, it's funny that you said that, because if you remember, you reminded me of that big giant life-size dollhouse that the comic books always advertised.
Right.
It was sold by Honor House, and then later on, when Honor House obviously went out of business over time, Harriet Carter used to carry that dollhouse. It was really fascinating. I remember that. I actually was able to obtain it one time, you know.
And how big was that thing when it was finished?
I never built it. I still have the original in the original box. I never put that together. I think it's supposed to be 3 feet high.
Is it like corrugated cardboard? I mean,
yes, it's corrugated cardboard. It said it came with the family, and it came with some grass and furniture. I mean, it's a mail order item, obviously.
Sure.
But, one thing I want to ask you, Richard, when you have a chance, send me a picture of that dollhouse you're talking about.
I will.
My oldest daughter was born in 1986, and I'm almost positive that I think she wanted it, and I told her I was going to get it for her. I just never did, because I think of the size it was.
Oh, it was one of those things. Now, I never saw it in a Toys R Us or any store, because, I mean, I'm sure I walked past it many times, but it wasn't what I was interested in back in the day. We met, my wife and I, we met in 94, And then I think I got this thing for her, I don't know, like 2001, 2002. But it was one of those things that I don't think you could even pick it up in the store. It was like, remember how you have to get a bike at Toys R Us? You had to get the little card, and then you paid for the bike, and then you went and you picked the bike up. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. I remember that. In fact, you just brought that back to me.
I do believe that was the way you purchased the Magical Mansion from Toys R Us. You had to get the little ticket. I guess they probably had one on display or a picture of one. But like I said, I have no real memory of that because at that time, 1990, I was so into the Keaton Batman. That was all I cared about. And I mean, when I walked into a Toys R Us, I would practically sprint back to the action figures to try and get, the latest Batman that was painted green and black and had no resemblance whatsoever to anything in the movie. But of course, I had to have it.
I'm going to tell you something now that you said that. My daughter reminded me the other day. She goes, Daddy, what happened to those Batman masks that you used to sell in the store? Now, my magic shop was 1989, and I had the full cowl from, the Keaton.
Yep, Ruby's costume.
That is correct. And I had a few of them. I think I had like 10, 15 of them.
Yeah.
And I sold most of them. I think I stayed with one or two. I believe I still have it. She said that I probably lost it in the fire, but I think I still have it somewhere.
Well, I have the Ruby's. I have the Ruby's Batman, and I have the Ruby's Joker with the fedora, which you had to buy separately. And the Joker costume is very nice. The Batman's kind of typical Ruby's, a little nice in some places and a little cheap at the edges. But the Joker costume was, it's all clothing. And although the coat wasn't lined, it was still nice quality and decent tailoring. And yeah, I still have that with the purple fedora. Now, I guess the rarest thing is they did Ruby's did the Joker hat in black, which looks like what Nicholson was wearing in the scene with William Hootkins in the alley when they're talking about Grissom and how Jack Napier's a nut and he's never going to take over the syndicate when Grissom goes either to jail or dies. And so they made a black one. I never bought that, but that was pretty rare, I think.
Well, I used to purchase from Ruby's at the time. In fact, I had an account with them. I believe I got, if I remember, I bought there was 15 Batman cowls, the entire piece. Yep. And I bought 9 Michael Myers masks. That was, I think, the first year that they actually put it out. And of course, it was William Shatner's face on it, which is funny. And I bought what do you call that? Michael. It was Michael Myers mask. And what's the name of that guy with the sweater with the stripes?
Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, Freddy Krueger, right. I had the Freddy Krueger mask and the fingers with the knives in them. Yeah. And I still have those original fingers.
Well, now, I've got a question about that.
Yeah.
I had the original when the Freddy Krueger stuff first hit in 85. So I guess we're talking about now maybe Halloween of 86, because I don't think it was right on the heels, because that was one of those movies that was a new line and it was kind of dumped in theaters and they just took off like crazy. But by Halloween of 86, they'd come out with stuff, and the very first Freddy Krueger licensed glove that I ever had was a lefty, which I never understood that. It was a
it is.
It was a left-handed glove.
It is a left hand. You're right. That's the one I have.
Instead of a right-handed glove, it was lefty, and that always was like, what the hell?
Well, if I remember, you know what? That's a good. Now that you brought it up, it just kind of dawned on me. That's right. But I saw it the other day in my storage. I have it in one of the filing cabinets, and of course, it fell out of the plastic enclosure.
Sure.
But it's there, and I think it is for your left hand. You're right.
Yeah. So that's kind of odd. Because I mean, clearly that's incorrect. But going back to the Batman stuff for a minute, I think did Ruby's use the term Grand Heritage back then? Because I believe that
I don't remember that.
There were 2 levels of the Batman costume.
Uh-huh.
And I think there were 2 levels of the Joker costume too. And I got the deluxe on both because, well, I ended up wearing the Joker costume that first Halloween. But the Batman one, I always had this dream of hitting the gym and bulking up and looking really good. And I never ended up having the cojones to actually put that costume on and go out and wear it. But
yeah,
but the Joker,
it wasn't as good as you actually thought when you put it on. Right. I bought it. I had the entire Batman outfit. But I gotta tell you one thing though. When you're talking about, there was at that time too, and it was sold in some of the comic books. Talking about rare stuff, there was a Spider-Man water glove. And it was like $4.99 in the comic books, and you would basically inject it with an injector, the water, and then you put on the glove, and it would shoot water like a web thing. I think I've only seen a picture at one time. I believe I had it one time, unless I still have it somewhere, because I know it's like a cheap plastic, and it has a bulb in it. And you fill the bulb with water, and you reminded me of that Spider-Man glove. And if you actually put the water Spider-Man glove, you can see the ad for it on Google. Mm-hmm. But it's one of those rare things that I think has never come up anywhere.
Wow. The only thing I ever had like that was I had a Spider-Man web shooter that was like, it was an elastic band. It went around your wrist. And then it was it shot like a rubber tip
bullet. Yeah, the plastic bullet with the
rubber tip.
And if you remember when they used to have the commercial for that, I'll never forget that. They had an 18-wheeler truck, and the kid would shoot the not a real one, I'm talking about a toy truck.
Right.
And it would click to the back of the truck, and then he pulled it back towards him.
Oh, that was a big selling item for kids back then. I remember I grew up in the South, and then ended up moving to New York and going to school there. But when in the 70s there was it was Heroes World, and they had a mall store in Livingston, New Jersey. And they had they did mail order ads in the comics, and then they had mail order catalogs that they would send out. If you ordered something, you were on the list, and you always got the catalogs. And they were all illustrated by students from the Joe Kubert School. I don't know if you've ever seen.
Yeah, what was the name of the company again?
It was Heroes World.
Oh yeah, I have quite a few of those catalogs. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
And I mean, I ordered so much stuff out of those catalogs. One of my prized possessions, talking about Spider-Man, is that record, the Rock Reflections of a Superhero, with the beautiful illustration by John Romita on the cover, and those crazy songs. And I ordered that out of the Heroes World, the Superhero Shop catalog, and so much stuff like that. And then when I moved to New York, my roommate in college was a guy from Mountain Lakes, New Jersey. And I said, have you ever been to Livingston Mall? And he's like, yeah, that's pretty near my house. And I'm like, I'm going. And the next time my parents came to visit, Scott and I, and Scott's a very famous comic book illustrator today. His name's Scott Hanna. He's a inker. He has the distinction of having inked more comic book pages professionally than any other living artist.
Wow!
Today, he's very successful. He's worked for Marvel and DC his entire career. Anyway, we piled in the car with my parents and drove out the Holland Tunnel and went to Livingston Mall specifically to go to Heroes World, to the superhero shop.
And you got to go?
Oh yeah, and I bought Amigo Batman and some other things. Spider-Man. I think I'd gotten some Star Wars stuff, and I had a little budget, and I broke the piggy bank open and bought a whole bunch of stuff out of there. And then oddly enough, when when I graduated from school, my buddy John and I got an apartment in New York and in the city, and it was outrageous. I mean, it was $2,300 a month. This is in 1984, and I just it was only a 1-bedroom, and John was very socially active, let's put it that way. So there was a lot of there was a lot of nights that I had to stay out late and then come home and get a couple hours of sleep and then go to work the next day. So it was tough, and I ended up subletting to a friend, and then got an apartment in Jersey.
But I remember that story, yeah.
Yeah, and then right down the road from where I had my apartment was Woodbridge Center, which I think at that time was the biggest mall in America. And believe it or not, they had a Heroes World superhero shop there.
Yeah. Oh, you know something now that you're talking about? Yes, I remember that.
Yep.
And the funny thing is, I bought there one of the Aurora models remake of the Dracula, and I was so stupid I never opened the box, and guess what? I lost it in the fire. So
that's a shame.
I never opened it.
Oh golly, Aurora kits. That's a story for an entire series of podcasts.
That definitely is. Hey, you know what? We're running out of time right now, so I wanted to say thank you for being on.
Thank you.
I appreciate everything, and I'll talk to you soon.
And if I'll leave you with one last thing, husbands and wives, support your spouse's hobbies. It makes for a happy marriage. That's all I got.
That's for sure.
All right. Thank you.
Take care now, buddy. Bye. Hey, Chuck, go ahead, buddy.
Okay, Eddie. The Black Dahlia murder. Elizabeth Short came to Hollywood to be an actress. Originally from Boston. Later, she lived in Miami, Florida. I believe she had some type of a lung ailment. At one time, she was operated on her lungs, and they suggested she move to a better climate. Short dropped out of high school in her sophomore year. Something very strange happened on January 15th, 1947, which still haunts America and remains unsolved. The remains of 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, aka the Black Dahlia, were found on South Norton Avenue, Los Angeles, California. The body was cut in half and drained of its blood. The body that was found was at first thought it was a mannequin because it was so white and lack of color. The cut or incision was that of a precision and damaged no internal organs. So this is very, very strange to say the least. Here's an unusual fact, really a fun fact. She was called the Black Dahlia by the press for her rumored love of sheer black clothing. And there was a movie out at that time in 1947 called The Blue Dahlia. So that's where she got her name from, actually. Her face was cut mouth to ears, leaving a macabre smile. Here's another fact. No blood was found on the ground, which led investigators to believe the body was moved after she was murdered. 9 days after the body was discovered, a strange letter was sent to the medical examiner. And this was the type of letter that was cut and paste letters from a magazine. The letter read in part, Los Angeles Examiner, here is Dahlia's belongings. And inside were her social security card, her birth certificate, photographs, and an address book with missing pages. The name Mark Hansen was embossed on the cover. Gasoline was used to clean the objects and wipe away fingerprints. On March 14th, a suicide note was found in a pile of clothing on Breeze Avenue, Venice, California. The note read, "To whom it may concern, I have waited for the police to capture me for the Black Dahlia killing, but have not. I am too much of a coward to turn myself in. This is the best way out for me. The note was discovered by a beach caretaker. It was never found out to whom it belonged to or who the clothes belonged to. Now we're going to go back to the night of the murder. Short was working as a waitress. She went on a brief trip to San Diego with Robert Manley, a 25-year-old salesman she was dating. Manley stated he dropped Short off at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. She was indeed seen using the payphone in the lobby of this hotel. The autopsy report was performed on January 16, 1947 by Los Angeles coroner Frederick Newbar. Short was listed as 5 foot 5 inches tall, 115 pounds, brown hair, light blue eyes, and badly decayed teeth. There was ligature marks on her ankles, wrists, and neck. As mentioned, the body was completely cut in half at the waist. Little bruising suggests this was done after death. Cause of death was hemorrhaging from lacerations to her face and shock from blows to the head and face. Fingerprints sent to the FBI was what was actually how they did identify her. She was in a little bit of an incident in 1943. She was arrested for underage drinking. So that's how they matched up the actual fingerprints. Police quickly deemed Mark Hansen, whose name was on the journal, a suspect. Hansen was a nightclub owner, and after some investigation, he was cleared. But there was a few things that I did want to make a side note about. I did read that Hansen at some point did make unwanted advances toward this young lady. So, I mean, so he was a viable suspect, but supposedly he did get cleared. Manley was cleared also. He was the man that had dropped her off that night. What happened was he passed several polygraph tests. By spring 1947, Short's case became a cold case. And here's a few interesting facts. Since the initial investigation, over 500 people confessed to the killing of Short. This never fails to amaze me, how people will confess to a crime. I don't get this. I mean, why on earth would somebody confess to something they did not do? But there you have it. There was 500 people, over 500 people that actually confessed. And this has always fascinated me. Like I said, every detective story that I've watched, every CSI type of thing, I'm just astounded that the multitudes of people that confess to things. I think a lot of times what they want is some type of attention, maybe a thrill-seeking type of thing. I really have no idea, but that's probably what it would be. LAPD homicide detective Steve Hodel claims his father, George Hodel, murdered Short. Now, this is very interesting, and I've actually seen a documentary about this, because this father of this gentleman here, his name is George Hodel. He was also accused of several other murders. One was being his secretary. Now, this was a guy who was trained in the medical field, so this does fit the criteria. And he was a strange, violent man. And this seems like a viable option to me. And his son, actually, like I said, he did come out and say that he believes his father is the killer. And at one point, there was a wiretap on George, and he was saying, "What if I did kill my secretary? What if I did kill Short? Who's going to prove it?" I mean, so for that to be on a wiretap alone, so I think pretty much it kind of leads in this direction. But there's a lot of interesting facts in this case, and I would suggest to all the interested readers, search this online. It's a fascinating story, and this is just one of many Hollywood stories from aspiring actresses who came to Hollywood, and they tried their hand at being a, quote, star. And what is strange about this, from what I read about Elizabeth Short, is she really had no acting experience, and she really never acted in anything. I mean, she lived in a little apartment off the side somewhere behind the place where she worked. So that's the thing that's astounding too. I don't get it. And there was rumors, of course. I mean, you know, there's always some type of rumors that come out of the rumor mill that she was a prostitute and so forth, you know, which I really have no idea about this, but there was rumors saying that she was. So, I mean, who knows exactly what went on here. And but the autopsy report was absolutely gruesome. And I believe I saw a picture years ago. I haven't seen it in recent times, but there was a picture of the autopsy, actually her face, and it was gruesome. I mean, her cut was from ear to ear, and her face almost had a macabre looking smile to it. It was absolutely horrendous. And I don't know if this was a picture that somebody snuck, but I did see this at one point, and I don't know if it's still on the internet or not. It would be worthwhile checking this out. But like I said, this is a fascinating story. It's always fascinated me. I believe there's been several books written about the Black Dahlia, and possibly even a movie or two, so it would be worth looking into. But once again, I hope you've enjoyed the story, and until next time, have a great and scary day.